the other is in, there is a state I think the other is in, there is a state the other thinks I am in. What is an appropriate action? When one is in a mental state, it is never a mental state. It is the reality. It is more than the reality, it is the absolute truth. A mental state would not be the same mental state were it to be known as just a mental state. In the moment of anger, is anger just a mental state? What is anger at that moment?
That's the reality.
Who is saying this, that there is a mental state I am in?
Somebody after that state.
No, this is a memory. This is a memory. The question is, what is appropriate action? This question itself is the appropriate action. Were this question to come at that point itself. Nothing else is appropriate. This question is appropriate. It is just what is needed. But let it arise then. When?
When you are in
Whenever
that state.
one is in that mental state. And that is not one particular mental state. Again, this is not something you can conveniently summon. That in the moments when it is all right with me, I'll call remembrance. I'll press the attention button. And in the moments of pleasure, I'll nicely forget everything and just please my senses, please my mind. Remembrance, immersion are your being. Tell me, the same mind that is angry, is that mind capable of moving into remembrance?
That moment, no.
So there is only that mind, there is no other mind. All other minds are memories. That angry mind, is it capable? But that's what we want. We want to move into remembrance, attention at the exact moment when anger is causing us the most suffering. When we have already moved deeply into suffering and the entire organism is reeling under the impact of suffering, then we want a medicine. But obviously it's a weak organism that is suffering. The medicine cannot arise from that weakness. Can it arise from that weakness? Habit is a wrong word and an inappropriate word, but let me use it. It has to be a habit. Remembrance has to be a habit. Attention has to be a habit. It cannot be an emergency number that when your house is being broken in, then you dial 100. Attention is not 100. Attention is a way of life. Remembrance is a way of life. But we take it as an emergency service. That when we will be suffering deeply, then we will say, the question is, why did the moment of suffering come in the first place? Why did you come to it in the first place? Of course, you would not be writing this in your moments of pleasure. And that is exactly the reason why you are writing this, because you don't write this in your moments of pleasure. दुख में सुमिरन सब करें, सुख में करे न कोई, जो सुख में सुमिरन करे तो दुख काहे को होए. That remembrance, sumiran. When you are having a good time, when all seems well, then why do you forget? And will that forgetfulness not remain with you as a habit for the rest of the time? That's the price to pay. We all know duality. Suffering goes with pleasure. But the mind is such that it is attracted towards only one end of the duality, which is pleasure. It is attracted towards that. In that moment, it will not remember. All is good, hunky dory, nice. Who wants to remember? But exactly because you do not want to remember, you will very quickly slip into suffering. Everything is fine. Who wants to remember? And because you don't want to remember, you will slip into suffering. By remembering, we do not mean that one should suppress that pleasure. When suffering can't be suppressed, how can pleasure be suppressed? Remembrance is obviously not suppression, not a forced mental activity. Remember it. Let constant remembrance be a way of life. Otherwise, all we'll be left with is intelligent sounding questions, which are not useful, which are intelligent, nice, good that you can express yourself in such language, but they will not have an impact on your life. And what do we want? A better life or a better vocabulary?
Better life.
There is no point enriching your memory go down. Remembrance has to be a way of life. One has to live in knowing. And then the very root from where all this arises will be no more. And you won't, I assure you, it won't suddenly happen. It won't suddenly happen. It will not be possible for you to, somebody is abusing you. It won't be possible for you to suddenly just realize that it is not a person but a state of mind, a way of conditioning. This flash won't occur to you unless you are deeply immersed. And that immersion again won't arise in that moment. It has to be a way of the mind. Otherwise, it won't arise. It won't arise. You have to give it due respect. looking at everything as divine, it just doesn't start abruptly. It's a kind of practice. So when one says that I can't look at a stone as divine, I can't look at the trees as divine, what do you expect? You will suddenly move down and start looking at the road and the stone and the trees, and suddenly you will feel as if everything is that divine. That can't happen. I know I'm using two words which are otherwise used in different contexts, habit and practice. But it is a practice. Your wife is in front of you, your son is in front of you, your father is in front of you. You don't look at them as divine. Then it is your wife. And most of the times the wife is just a body. Then it is your son. And most of the times the son, especially if the son is yet a kid, the son is just a toy to play with. So the wife is a body, the son is a toy. And then suddenly you move out and you expect that the tree will appear divine. How will the tree appear divine if the wife does not appear divine? How can that happen? It is a practice, it's a way of living. But in the moments of pleasure with wife, it will be very difficult, very inconvenient to remember that she is divine, not merely a body. So you won't want to remember. You won't want to remember. Otherwise all the fun is gone. Sex is no more pleasing. There is no more a body. There is the divine in front of me. How can it be pleasing anymore? Yeah, of course, then there is a particular joy in it, but that is not pleasure. And I am addicted to pleasure. Who wants joy? When the entire system is craving for pleasure. That is why sadhana has its own importance. It's a kind of training, it's a kind of rehearsal. Getting it? Let me bring in a third adage, and that's from the language of war. They say that the more you sweat in training, the less blood you spill in war. So the more attentive you are in your normal movements, the less suffering you will suffer when situations go adverse. You'll have to give your time, energy, attention to it. Otherwise, it won't happen. There is no trick. There is no magic. This question is all. It's just that this question is arising at a wasted time. Let this question come at the right time and you will know what appropriate action is. This question is all. You are already there, but at the wrong time.
That means when I am into attention and I am not allowing that remembrance, and when I am into remembrance only and I am not allowing attention, that means
Remembrance is not memory. Attention is the remembrance.
attention is the remembrance.
By saying remembrance, probably you feel as if we are referring to a particular object, remembering a particular object. Remembrance is not remembering a particular object. Remembrance is a state of attention.
Okay. Only then it can be total.
It is total. Memory is always fractional. Memory will say remember that one thing. Attention is never fractional. Attention is always total.
I was relating it with present and past. So attention means I was referring as present moment, this moment. Only this experience.
In attention there is nothing called only this experience, because whenever you will say this experience, it will not remain total. In attention there is no point of memory. When we say memory is fractional, attention is total, that does not mean that in attention you are remembering everything. Please don't take everything as the opposite of one thing. It means you are remembering nothing. You are just attentive. Usually when we say that concentration is upon one thing and attention is not limited to one thing, probably we are lured into believing as if in attention you are, when we say if you are attentive, then this will happen, that will happen. If you are attentive right now, does that mean that you are trying to remember everything that has happened in your life? If you are attentive right now, does that mean that there is a particular part of the mind which is going in the direction of one sound that is coming from outside? No, none of that. Attention is like a background in which all the usual processes of the brain are happening, but that background is there. Everything else is happening, but the mind is in a particular state. Attention is not a special activity. Attention is not a new activity at all. Attention is the change of the actor itself. It is not a new activity. You want to say, I will remain the same, but I will include in my portfolio attention as another activity. No, that is not what attention is. Attention is the change in the quality of the actor itself. All the activities can remain the same. You can drink tea, you can sit there and nod, you can get up and walk. No new activity. The actor is changing.
Change in actor, change in mind.
Yes. But what will the ego say? The ego will say, no, let the actor remain the same. Activity must change. And who is the actor? The ego itself. Attention is not a new activity. I am the same, but I am meditating. This will not help. How can this help? I am the same, but I am meditating. How can this help? The actor has to change. And the activity can remain the same. If it has to remain same. I don't know. When the actor changes, chances are the activities will commiserately change. But even if they are to remain the same, let them remain same. You focus on the actor. You look at the actor.
Sir, is there a possibility of that we are considering that once the actor changes, then the activity changes? Is that possible that for the beginning phase, if I start changing the activities, then it might
Yes,
lead
yes,
to
yes,
further-
of course. Of course it is possible. That is another way. That is another way. But that's a very delicate way. Because the mind is so cunning that even if you change the activities, it will say, I am changing my own activities. So it has a great capacity to co-opt whatever comes to it. But that is possible. That is possible. Because howsoever cunning ego might be, still what is it? Just poor ego. It can be overcome. Its lot is to be overcome. Now, for example, Shantanu has just started going to the gym. Now the fact of the matter is, as the body changes, the mind is got to change. It's scientific research that the mind is not only in the brain, but in every cell of the body. Every cell of the body is mind. So obviously, as your cells change, as your configurations change, your thoughts also start changing. Yes, I am asserting that a fit person is likely to have different thoughts compared to an unfit, overweight man. Yes. So, with the activity, yes, the activity is going to the gym. With the activity, the actor can change. But to me, it appears like a secondary way. Yes, but this way can also be utilized. There is no doubt about it. It can be also be utilized.
But when we are saying practice, aren't we saying the same thing? Looking at your activities.
That's why we are saying it can be utilized, yes.
So that is how it is used in army.
That is how it is used in most sadhanas.
Yes.
That is how it is used in most methods that change the activity and correspondingly hope for a change in the mind.
In fact, the entire process that read a book, come to a session is all based on that.
But again, remember and be cautious about the pitfall. Who am I right now?
Who is attending the session?
The coming person.
No,
Who's trying?
a very
Person who's trying to change.
a very intelligent man. Who am I? A very intelligent man. All right. So there is great arrogance there. All right, go and read 4 books of Krishnamurti next Sunday. Who am I? Last Sunday, I was just an intelligent man. And this Sunday, who am I? An intelligent man who has read 4 Krishnamurti books. So what has happened? The actor has co-opted the activity. The actor has remained the same and the activity has just become a tool with the actor. That danger is there. One has to be cautious. In using the activity route, this danger is there. Especially if one is deeply conditioned. Obviously, those books will have an impact if you read them in attention. But the point is, deep conditioning does not allow attention. So, you'd never know. You require a trainer then at that point in time.
But if this is secondary, then what is the primary?
Primary is to just realize
Then again, I'm conditioned. How can
under
I
the
change?
weight of your own suffering. I'm conditioned, but I'm suffering, right? Whose suffering is it? My own. And given that we are pleasure-seeking animals, the mind will apply all its energy to get rid of suffering. We want pleasure. What we get is suffering. So in a way that's good, because when you suffer, the mind just wakes up. It wants to find out what's wrong. In your pleasure, you never wake up because everything is alright. I'm already being pleased. Suffering.
But in that waking up, we look for pleasure.
Yes, you look for pleasure, but with the causes of the suffering. You want to remove the suffering, right?
True.
And there is a great chance that if you really go into the cause of the suffering, you will find out something. Of course, there also you can deceive yourself. You may do an incorrect diagnosis. But then if you do an incorrect diagnosis, you will get greater suffering and repeated suffering. So life itself will keep hurting you and hitting you till you recognize something. And that's a clue to most of us. If we find ourselves suffering due to the same reason, in the same situation, again and again, that's a clear indication that our diagnosis of the suffering is wrong.
But what I have observed people doing is that they consider that this is the way of life. Suffering is inevitable, it will be there, conflict will be there. This is how
Yes,
life
they are right in their own way. Suffering will be there if they are what they are.
So they do not wake up only. They totally ignore and they totally discard the.
Let them get even greater that suffering.
That requires a level of sensitivity to identify this causes happening because of the suffering.
Prayer. Pray for them.
You have to put from outside.
Nothing can be
Something
done.
that automatically
Just pray. Just pray. If you want to enhance somebody's suffering, there is one beautiful way. Suffering and the toleration of suffering always comes with the belief that, as you said, this is the way of life. The fellow says that this is the way life is. Everybody's got to suffer. So, what's exceptional about it if I too am suffering? That's the way of life. You want to prove him wrong? Stand in front of him like a shining example. Show to the fellow that no, suffering is not the way of life. Here I am. And this will be such an insult to his ego that his suffering will be multiplied manifold. And then he'll have to wake up. A Buddha is a great insult. A Buddha is like a bag of abuses walking on the road. You look at him, and if you have any ego, because ego, all said and done, has the same source as its
But I think again, the way Nidhi said, there's some sensitivity required, because then I've seen people saying, forget Buddha, Buddha is Buddha. We are not on that level, or we are not in that life, so you can't talk about
Let
him.
them say that in the presence of the Buddha. When the Buddha is there, eating, walking, sleeping, they'll see that he is living the same life in such a different way. And the same ego that is keeping them asleep will become a reason for their awakening.
But you'll have to get close to them.
You'll have to get close to them. You'll have to live in their vicinity. Yes. See, the ways of all this are mysterious. You don't have to try too hard. A Buddha may be a great insult, but at the same time, once you have seen him, there is some part of you who cannot forget him. You may run away, and you may not want to come in contact for years or decades, but there is one part of you that will remember.
कल था पेज पर एक
Somewhere you may keep saying that the fellow was a bastard and who likes him, let him go to the dogs, whatever. But, and that's what you're saying. But somewhere you will know
वो तो belong like
that you worship him. That one glimpse has been sufficient. And that will cause such a consternation in your mind that you will have to come close to him. If not in 1 year, then in a decade. But you will have to return to him in some way or the other. And remember, the Buddha is not a physical body. So that does not mean that you have to remember to that physical body. You will have to remember to Buddhahood. You will have to return to Buddhahood. Once you have seen a Buddha, you are no more the same. He's a glimpse of what is possible. You can reject him, you can refuse him, you can abuse him. But sooner than later, you'll have to return to him. And that's the best way. Be a Buddha. And you'll become the cause of awakening of the sleeping ego. You don't have to try too hard. How it will happen, that you don't have to determine. A Buddha is not too concerned about what will happen and when it will happen.
It seems that rather trying will only defeat the whole.
Trying means you are not yet there. Trying means that the flow is yet not smooth.